Tyler, how are you? Happy Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween to you too, man. It's good we're talking about a horror movie today.
Yeah, perfect timing. Um, Great movie. I'm a sucker for horror films that take place around Christmas time. Doesn't seem like we have enough of them. I can't get enough of any of these. And what I liked about this one was the fact that it was totally different, but it really stayed faithful to the genre. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. It ran kind of like a Hallmark film, which was really unique, and but it was kind of like a Hallmark film on steroids, and it had the violence of like our like a Silent Night Deadly Night film, which was great. So congratulations, and I have a feeling people are really going to enjoy this.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. We definitely we're trying to find like that sort of balance. Like I really love holiday horror movies and feel like
Yeah,
there could be more of them.
yeah,
And so yeah, it was definitely something that was kind of on our mind about like where that line is. But yeah, I definitely love I love Christmas films in general, and so I've always wanted to make one.
and how did this? So, with that being said, how did this all start for you for this film?
Yeah, it came around. So Michael had written the script on spec, and then sort of partnered with Divide and Conquer, who Adam Hendricks and Greg over there, who had he worked with on Freaky, and then they brought on Seth Kaplan, who's kind of more of a lead producer, and then Michael was actually producing himself. It's the first time he's really done that, and so they started to kind of package things like even before I was on, they brought on AMC as a partner, and then eventually I was brought on. But what I really responded to in the script was the idea of making like an uplifting slasher. Like a lot of
Yeah,
the stuff that I've directed so far has been things that I've written, and a lot of those are a little bit more cynical. And so I wanted to see if I could sort of play it straight, and do something that's a little
yeah,
more sweet. And I like the idea of characters that aren't pieces of shit. So like
Mhm.
it was interesting to kind of use some familiar tools to myself, but then do something that's a little bit more that I wouldn't normally write. And so that was what kind of attracted me to it. And then they kind of saw things the same way, and so we started kind of developing it together, and then we're able to sort of see it through.
And do you find it more difficult to direct when something you haven't written versus something you have?
Yeah, I would say the relationship's definitely different because you feel like you don't really have any like it sort of closes some opportunities in certain ways because like you like my instinct when I've written something is I'm very aware of like, oh, I could just cut that line or whatever. And whereas on when you're kind of direct, or at least when I'm directing somebody else's material, I try and like I don't like to kick people out of the process. Like I really like collaborating with people in it. Like chances are if you wrote the script, you probably have ideas that would be valuable when you're making the script.
Yeah,
And so that's, I mean, I know that's like a somewhat unusual perspective, but like I'm not really threatened by writers being on set. Like I like them there. I like people having good ideas, and I like being able to steal those ideas and put them in the movie and make it
yeah.
better. And so like Michael being a producer on this was like, okay, well, like he obviously wants to be involved, and so it really opened up these opportunities where like it wasn't always on my shoulder to come up with the best idea. Like we could sort of sit down and riff, and he's right there in the story with you. And I've had shades of that in the past. Obviously, like with Chris Hill, who's my writing partner. He's often doesn't love being on set, but is often
Yeah.
like involved in the process when we're shooting, and like and brings a lot of ideas to the table even at the late stages. And even like I did this episode of Into the Dark for Blumhouse a couple years ago in Hulu, we call Good Boy, starring Judy Greer, and the Eisenberg's brothers who wrote that script were kind of there throughout the whole process, and were really good collaborators, and like weighed in on cuts and things like that. And so I've had a pretty good experience with writers, and I try to be as collaborative as I can. But like you do, like not having written it yourself, you definitely feel like you do you don't have all the tools, but usually it opens
Yeah.
up other opportunities where people can sort of bring other things to the table, and it creates other tools as well. So
No, it makes sense. And like you said, I think you can kind of get more. more story out of it because you have that, that extra hand there that actually wrote it. So
Yeah, totally. And often, like while you're on set, you're dealing with something in the moment and have to be very present. And there, you could see a problem coming down the track, and sometimes, like they might be in a better position to deal with that. Like rethinking a scene that you're shooting tomorrow or whatever. Whereas, like in the moment, you kind of have to make these calls.
yeah, it totally makes sense. And how was it working with Justin Long? I love Justin Long. I know there's a lot of horror fans that do because he does have, that history with our genre. Among other, I mean, he's done comedy though. He's done action. He's been great in everything. So, what was it? What was it like? And did you have any funny stories with Justin?
Yeah, I mean, hey, I've been a Justin Long fan since Galaxy Quest,
Yeah,
and so I've definitely always had him kind of on the list of people that I would really like to work with. And so he was on our list pretty early for this, but then didn't come on until kind of late because we didn't quite know if we were going to be able to get him or if the schedule was going to work out. And
yeah,
we had sort of chased down some other possibilities. And then but yeah, I mean, obviously he has a great history with Tusk and Drag Me to Hell. And I would argue that Idiocracy is a horror movie. But it's he's a bit of a he's kind of a fire hose of ideas. So like he came in with like
yeah,
a very specific like look, but then also like a ton of ideas of like it's sort of like this,
yeah,
and so for me it was about like kind of putting our minds together and trying to figure out like okay, like he has a very good beat on who this guy is, and
yeah.
so we threw around a lot of references, and some of them were like broader, like the like a Michael Douglas and Wall Street kind of thing, and then
Mhm.
like I know Joel Osteen was a big reference for him, like kind of that soft spoken sort of preacher who's kind of corporate and so he had that sort of vibe to it. And then we talked just a lot about like sort of these sort of kind of sleazeball sort of baby boomer businessmen, and we're playing him aged up a little bit,
Yeah.
and I like the idea of we're not really using that like nice guy assumption that he's sort of known for. And but at the same time he's also like our story can contain a big villain as long as he's not too crazy. And so it was a question of like, okay, with this very particular look that he's got going on, how do we sort of shape it and make it work within our story? And and my guiding light, a big thing for the first act of the movie was like I like it being sort of a Hallmark movie where like the villain who has their like mustache twirling like corporate residential scheme in the little town gets spurned and then just decides to murder a bunch of people, and
Yeah.
that's very funny to me. Like and he really got the satire of that, and was bringing a real sort of powerhouse amount of performance to it in a way that was really great for me as a director, because you just sort of have to just pay attention and just kind of shape it, because he'll come up with a million good ideas.
And that voice, was that his idea, or how much direction did you give him on that voice he was
Yeah, he did a bit of it while we did sort of our kind of pre-meetings and stuff like that, but like I really didn't see the full version of it until we were on set, and then it was just it was more of a question of content rather than like the actual performance, because he had sort of dialed it in.
Yeah, because it was, I could hear it, and then it just kind of, I heard like hints of it in and out. So it was really, it was odd, but it totally fit the character.
Yeah, he's like a bit untrustworthy,
Yeah,
but I mean he was, he stays pretty in character, like even between takes, not like I wouldn't say like, not in terms of mentality, like he's very easy to deal with, but in terms of like he's often like going through things and staying in the scene mentally, I think because he gets to a weird place, and it helps because it really pays off.
and I know during filming, you always run into the budget's always the biggest thing with an issue, or it's timing. Or any of those, did you have, like, as far as your shooting schedule, was that really condensed, or did you have more freedom?
No, our yeah, schedule was tight. We had about 18 days, which is not a lot. And like it's there's never enough time, never enough money, but like we sort of made decisions like, okay, well, we're going to go for this location, which is going to work a little bit better.
Yeah,
It's going to be more expensive, and therefore we're going to lose a day and stuff like that. So you sort of, I think, every time you make a film, like it sort of feels like the walls are kind of closing in around you, and it's about sort of protecting the story and making sure you have enough time for the core of it. And I felt like we did a good job, but like I think Tiana, our production designer, and Nick, our DP, made a lot of very judicious decisions, and Matea, our costume designer as well, to kind of keep the budgets down so that we could do we could you keep a lot of the creativity intact, and a lot of that falls on like our like Amanda, our line producer, who really kind of kept very tight control of the budget, and as a result allowed us to do a lot.
Was there anything like heavy that you lost because of your budget that you would have liked to have done, but you just absolutely couldn't do it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that were we had to sort of rethink. Like one was I really wanted to do a full body burn when we were killing the angel, like rather than
Yeah,
electrocute. And we'd sort of figured that out, but it was very tough with the location, like because fire codes and stuff like that, and
yeah,
so we ended up sort of scaling it back, and it wouldn't have really worked anyway. But there was another set piece where, like originally, when he gets killed, like that whole set piece was supposed to be, he was supposed to, like, the angel was going to like drown under the ice like a frozen lake.
mhm,
And then, like, we were shooting at the wrong time of year to have a frozen lake, and we couldn't really make a fake frozen lake. So, like,
yeah,
it was one of those things. And then I replaced that at a certain point with this kind of like snow maze kind of set piece where we were going to like cover like essentially like a hedge maze and snow blankets. And it was like, and so I had sort of this sort of whole Shining kind of thing figured
yeah,
out
yeah,
with like this drone shots and stuff. Anyway, it would have been rad. And but we just like we couldn't get drone certified for the place that had the hedge maze. So it was like, and then the schedule was a little weird where we have to like company move to it. And so anyway, it was a bunch of things. Essentially, it was going to cost me like 4 days to shoot there, and I was like, "Oh, I
yeah,
can't." And so we sort of had to pivot a little bit, but I'll put that set piece in another movie.
yeah. That'll work. That would have been really cool though. And speaking of the angel, the costume that the killer wore, how did that come together? That
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, as a slasher fan, I'm very cognizant of like costumes and things like that, and people really look for like what does the mask look like, what does the killer feel like, and in the script, like it had some description, but it wasn't like it wasn't all figured out. Like we knew he was going to be sort of all white and have a cloak and be sort of like an angel,
yeah,
have this sort of ornate kind of dagger, but like not really much detail because you don't really want to get bogged down with that in the script. You just kind of have to imagine what's the scariest version of that. And we knew based on the type of action he was going to do, he wasn't going to be like a big lumbering like Jason Voorhees sort of character. Like he
yeah.
was going to be like lean and quick, like a Ghostface sort of character.
Mhm.
And also given the body types of the people that need to be justified in the suit, we had to sort of balance that. And then, but I started looking at like vintage like angel tree toppers,
Yeah,
those like old kind of ones, especially ones in the 40s, and a lot of them have like this very blank kind of porcelain expression. And so I was like, well, what if we do something like that? Like, where if it's just like you're sort of looking at nothing, and there's no eyes, it's just like reflective, and we wanted the texture of like a frosted light bulb. And so you can sort of see the Christmas lights in it and stuff like that if you get close. And I wanted to do a little more of that, but we ended up kind of designing a mask that would do that. And so Matea, our costume designer, really took the lead on that. And then meanwhile, like I would say Tiana, our production designer, did a lot of figuring out the knife, figuring out how we could incorporate. Like once we realized the costume wasn't going to have wings, it was going to have these sort of sharp shoulder blades that sort of imply that a little bit. But then we put the wings on the knife, on the hilt, and people have been really responding to that because it's a little unusual looking, and it's there's not a lot of white slashers. Usually they're dark because they want to hide in the shadows, and we wanted to hide ours in snow and up against like white surfaces.
yeah. Very, camouflaged. I mean, I can only think of Ghostface as being white, but this was totally unique and different. Like you said, no expression, just a blank face.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love Ghostface. Like, he's sort of that it's reminiscent of that Scream painting, and just kind of sort of somebody
Hmm.
screaming at you,
Yeah,
but it's also all black except for the white face, and Michael Myers is all black except for the white face, even Jason Voorhees is sort of like has the lighter hockey mask, but
darker.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like it's very popular to have white faces, but then dark clothing, and we want to do like all white. And what does that look like? And then once we got into it, it was like that we don't want to look too Moon Knight, we don't want to look too much like Spider Gwen, like, and we wanted to kind of figure out like how the angel looks, on its own.
And I know the film is kind of filled with has Easter eggs here and there. I don't want to spoil them all. I noticed a couple last names that might, like Prescott and Carruthers. Were any of those related to any films? Like Carruthers, I recognize from Halloween 4. Not sure if there was a connection there. And then obviously Prescott from Scream.
Yeah. Michael peppered in a few of those like slasher directly ones. I didn't really add any of those. Like I got a lot of shit for it on Tragedy Girls, where I had like somebody named after Sean Cunningham, which is like not the most well known. I mean, like, he directed Friday the 13th, but he's a little underknown, I feel. And people were just like, "Oh man, what a hammy reference!" And I was like, "Really?" I mean, like, if you're watching, like some of his other movies, I mean, that's kind of my point. Like I'm trying to point people, especially younger people who aren't as, like like I don't know, like horror fans my age, like I mean, I guess probably you and I are probably similar ages. You're very aware of a lot of like those big franchises and a lot of their history and things like that, but like I mean, a lot of my movies that I make are for like people who are just starting out, like
Yeah.
horror, and I want to provide a little roadmap because that's what like like the Kevin Williamson movies did for me. Like I mean, I'd already seen like Evil Dead and stuff like that by that point, but like I went back and watched Terror Train because they talked about it in Scream. Like and you want to point back to the things that inspire you. And so you need to do it in ways like this. And even though like people who already know about those things are kind of, might feel like it might be basic or something like that, it does help younger fans. And that's, kind of how I approach it.
No, you're absolutely right. My daughter, she's 18. She saw Scream, I think was the last one that came out, the sixth one, and then she became a fan. So she went back and watched them all. But then they started referencing other movies, like Friday 13th. So then she's able to go back and it was a segue, just like you said. So your film, might be a segue, for fans to explore, the older franchises that we grew up with.
Totally. I mean, like, and I mean, I've been doing some amount of that, but I try and make a sort of deep cuts. I mean, Michael, I think tends to pick ones that are more direct inspirations of the movie that he's working on, whereas
Yeah.
I tend to pick stuff that's a little bit more off the beaten path, but may not have anything to do with the film. Like Tragedy Girls had a very direct reference where like the characters like watch martyrs. Like which is like not a, like that's not a casual watch, but is a very rewarding thing if you can get through it.
Yeah.
And like and it's funny if you're a horror fan because you're like if you're showing martyrs to somebody, like chances are you're trying to turn them off or make them squeamish or fuck with them somehow.
Yeah.
And it like and that's funny to me because of their reaction to it because it fit the character of the scene. But again, it's like martyrs wasn't a direct reference to wasn't a big influence on Tragic Girls. I just was trying to push people to see the movie.
Yeah. No, totally. It totally makes sense. And unfortunately, we ran out of time already. So it was great speaking with you. Congratulations. I believe November 10th is when the film will be released. It's a Wonderful Knife. So I know horror fans are going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm hoping people come out for it, and we're excited because the screenings have been going well at Beyond Fest and a few
Good.
other horror festivals we've done so far, and the reception's been warm. So I'm hoping people dig it.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again, Tyler. I appreciate it. And hopefully, I'll be talking to you soon about your next project.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. This is fun. Nice chatting with you.
All right. You have a good one. Happy Halloween.
You too. Bye.
Take care.